Okay, we've got participants joining. Welcome, 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 everybody. It is great to see you here. As you are getting settled in, getting your coffee, getting your water, please, I want to draw your attention to the chat and make sure that, hello, Brent is talking to all of us. Um, Drop in there. What's your New Year's resolution? We're here. We're starting off. It's the beginning of the year. I hope it's get more CEUs. And I
Or
also
not wait to the last minute to get those CEUs.
I'm not gonna wait. I heard a horror story of somebody having to retake the exam, and that scared the bejesus out of me.
You would think that that would scare me, but I like to say I'm a type B BCBA, and no matter what, I'll go to CEUs. I just don't like record them. And then something about the urgency, like ready
Yeah.
to go. Let's go. Deep
Brent,
dive for the month.
Can you enable the chat for us? I think it is not currently enabled.
Yep. Here.
But the Q&A is open. Okay, fantastic. So yeah, those see, I'm obsessed. I'm one of those people where I gotta get them all. It's like my little Pokemon. I like to save them. I like to just watch them. Um, Once you actually start making them though, too, then that also helps.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
All right. So we are going to get started. I wanted to start with some introductions. Hi, I'm Meg Jones. I am the Director of Communication and Training over at Aloha ABA. We are your friendly practice management software for scheduling, billing, staff profile, client profile management, authorization management, as well as reporting, payroll, AR management. We also just launched our new product, Alina, which is a clinical integration for data collection, graphing, and reports. And I have here today one of our favorite customers, Dr. Sarah Feldman from Head Start Health. Yay, we're so happy she's here.
Hi.
And want
Yeah.
to give you a second to introduce yourself.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so I'm Dr. Sarah Feldman from Head Start Health. I am the Director of Provider Engagement over there. And if you're not familiar with Head Start Health, really, we are a go-to source for BCBAs who are looking to become independent, start their own ABA company. So we help with the entire life cycle of that, from your free LLC setup, credentialing, insurance support, client acquisition support, RBT recruitment, one-on-one mentorship, and everything in between. And really, we are by BCBAs for BCBAs. I've owned my own ABA company for over 10 years. Started with $300, scaled it to a multi-site location, and exited. And really, we want to remove those barriers that people like me reached when we were starting out our company. So if you haven't heard about Head Start Health, definitely check us out. And we're happy to help BCBAs go independent.
And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that as we go through the webinar
Yeah,
today
for
as
sure.
well. So today, our webinar worth one supervision CEUs, those specialized CEUs are hard to get, is called Beyond the Exam. Today, we're going to be talking about the skills that BCBAs do not learn by taking the test. What are those skills and deficits and gaps that we see in new BCBAs, and how can we help to better support them?
Yeah,
So
so
let's
important.
get started. So this webinar is for, um, today we're going to talk about who the webinar is for, all the skill gaps that we see, why this matters, and what is our role as employers, supervisors, and key takeaways. We are reserving the last 10 minutes today to have questions. So please put questions in there. I already saw one that, what is my favorite Pokemon? Sorry, I made a Pokemon reference and I don't know any Pokemon. Sarah, do you know any?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I mean, I only know from back in the day, like mid 90s when that was a thing, the first go round for Pokemon. So I know like a Pikachu, um,
You stole
and
mine.
a
Charizard, is that one?
Charmander.
Charmander.
Okay, I'm just like pulling these from like deep, deep within like what my brother used to collect. But I think that's it, man.
I
I
think
don't
I'm going to
know.
say whatever card is deep in the basement of my house that's now worth like $5,000 is my favorite
Is it
Pokemon.
though? It's probably like a Beanie Baby. Like you keep it, but I don't know. So I did want to point out, it looks like the chat is not working for this session. So Q&As do work though. So just put those over the Q&As and we'll definitely keep an eye on that.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's get started and talk about who this webinar is for. First of all, we're newly certified BCBAs. Congratulations, you did it. You have fancy letters behind your name. You are just like all the rest of us now. We're talking to you, but there's a
Mhm.
lot of things, humbling moment, things that you don't know yet, simply because you haven't had the experience.
Yeah,
Sarah, I'm
you're
going to
not
let you
supposed to know
speak a
them.
little. Yeah, you passed the exam yesterday. Today, you don't know any more than you already
Yeah.
did. We're so proud of you, but this is where it really starts. And Sarah, maybe you can talk a little bit more about the BCBAs and organization owners that you work with here.
Yeah. Yeah. So really, um, I would say this webinar is for anybody who interacts with BCBAs, whether you're the business owner, whether you're a supervisor, whether you are actually the BCBA in general, because you need to know how to support your team members to be successful, right? So it comes down to scaling up and really understanding what are the initial skills that people need to be successful. And know that, the cost of replacement for BCBAs is so, so high. So once you find a BCBA that fits those values of your company, we kind of need to do everything in our power to really make sure that that individual is successful. And I think a lot of times we just throw people in and say, "You got the letters, so go ahead and go forth and conquer. You know all," but we know better than that, and it creates a lot of turnover and burnout. So definitely, all if you have a pulse and you're a BCBA or you interact with BCBAs, I think you'll find some value.
Absolutely. That 100% happened to me. I will tell you that much. So,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. All right. This conversation matters because a lot of times people think that passing the exam is the end of the road,
Right.
and it really is just the beginning. You need a lot more skills other than being able to analyze a very specific question. A lot of the graduate programs that we see these days teach to the test, but they're not teaching those practical skills that are what people are going to be doing every day. There is not a single question on the exam for how to complete all the hours in your authorization. There's not a
Yeah.
single question on the exam about what do I say to a parent when they ask this question?
Mhm.
And that's really what your day to day is going to be. The exam teaches you how to maybe design very specific programs, read a graph, which is all really, really valuable. But that person energy, how to talk to people, how to interact throughout the day, that adulting that we all need to do is something that the exam does not teach.
Yeah. And a lot of times I refer to like our supervisees and our first time, BCBAs as like, this is your first big kid job. Like everything up to this point has been about you as an individual contributor. But now there are so many different layers of who you affect and who you have to support and who you're responsible for. And that can weigh really, really heavy. But I think understanding kind of the complexity of that jump from I'm an individual contributor, I'm told what to do, versus now I am more of a crafter of all other people and their interactions and what their support looks like in order to do our job. So, you know, that conceptual clinical knowledge, great, but definitely doesn't generalize to all the nuances that come in with moving into that leadership role.
Moving into that expert role,
Yeah.
too. I love what you said about how you went from being the contributor to the person who's designing it all to making it all. And that can be a lot of pressure. I know when I would supervise young BCBAs, they would come in after a few just wide-eyed of this is so much, I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And BCBAs burn out a lot. We've seen the stats that BCBAs tend to be younger. They tend to be they haven't been certified very long. Ones who have made it a while are ones who are well supported.
Yeah. I think that's really great. And we go into the field because we're fixers. And it takes, it takes practice and mentorship to really know what's most important, how to set those boundaries, what to focus on next, and to also realize that at the end of the day, there's so much work to be done, but there's, enough. Like you have to kind of figure out how to forgive yourself for not being superhuman. And there's only as much as you can do and accomplish at that time. And your best efforts are enough. And so, whether that comes from a birdie in your ear telling you that, or whether that comes from, you know, some self study because maybe you don't have that same level of mentorship, but you've got a great level of self awareness of that's a skill that we need to work on. It's definitely a very important, lasting skill to be in the field.
Absolutely. So, what are some common early career struggles that
Yeah.
BCBAs see? Maybe you can talk a little bit about this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think some of the most common ones that I see are that, that first bullet says feeling overwhelmed by competing priorities. So, what are those competing priorities? I think a classic example is when you're in a center and you are working on maybe some head down tasks of I need to finish my session notes or I need to put the final touches on this behavior and intervention plan, and you hear your team working through crisis management at the same time. And at what point do we need to decide, okay, the team has it because I've scaffold support, they have a good plan, they know what to do, versus when do I need to get up from my desk and go support and help because I want to be a team player or they need additional expertise and support. So I think that ongoing, always having the ear out of what's going on in the center, that's really tough. Um, and a lot of times I see BCBAs and new BCBAs who come into the field and they're like, I'm not going to be considered a team player. I'm going to lose my street cred if I'm not, actively in every single moment. But really, we have to think through what is our role in this. And, those roles change very quickly. And so understanding what that role is very important. I think managing time across those multiple clients. So like there are clients that you will always, always feel like you are just behind. There is so much to do. There's so much programming. Either this kiddo has really complex behavior or this kiddo acquires skills really, really fast. Um, there's always something to do and more to do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that kiddo is going to get more supervision hours or more supervision time. We just need to kind of think through our time use a little differently. Because there are some kids that, if we are not careful, we will spend 40 hours with in the entire, all my time. But um, is it billable? Is it appropriate? Am I creating support systems that are maybe really hard to titrate off of because I'm making this client dependent on one-to-one direct BCBA care? And is that the least restrictive thing for them?
I think that's a really good point too, to kind of bring it back to the position they've come from to the position they've moved to. Before, they maybe had 4 clients,
Right.
maybe as an RBT, and now they have 15. And I used to think of it as you're teaching, being an RBT is a marathon. You're there day in and day out,
Yeah.
chugging away through
Yeah.
programs. Whereas being a BCBA is a sprint. You are running short distances a bunch of times a day to different types of
Mhm.
activities. And those competing priorities of you don't just have 4 kids in your head, you have 15 kids in your head all the time is really overwhelming because I promise you there's no point where all of them are on track and doing well.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. But that's not a reflection of you and your abilities. And I
100%.
think that is where I see my amazing bleeding heart. You know, these are our field is filled with amazing humans. Um, but that like helper guilt and just the guilt of there's so much more I can do. And I know I could do more if I just had more focused time. And um, I think we have to kind of figure out how to balance yourself in that and that you're not overwhelming yourself and you're not beating yourself up for not being a superhuman because we're just not. Um, I think one of the things that I also really see new BCBAs struggle with is moving into a leadership mentor role for either their colleagues that used to be their colleagues, or RBTs if you're staying at the same clinic, or just of others in general. There's a mix of imposter syndrome that comes along with it of like, who am I to tell you what to do? I just figured this out myself, and maybe you're going to find out that I don't know what I'm talking about. Um, but we know that's not true. You've earned your spot. And then also kind of what does it look like to not be necessarily the solver of the problems, but I'm help facilitating, um, conceptualizing of a case and thinking of different ways and solutions for that RBT to be able to stand on their own 2 feet when you're not present. And
Mhm.
so really not sure of like, am I supposed to tell you everything that I need to do? Or how do I shape what it is that I need you to do so you become self-sufficient? And then what if I'm wrong? What if this
Mhm.
RBT has been, you know, a is a lifer and they've been in RBT for a really long time. They've been with this kiddo for maybe a really long time and you're new to the case. That can be really hard to kind of go through and think through. And so I really see a lot of BCBAs who struggle with that kind of concept, especially at the beginning. But honestly, it's usually an idea of like I'm self-aware. I'm just not sure which way to go.
It's hard because we're doers and we're fixers.
Yep.
And especially when you've come from the RBT, you see a client in crisis and you want to step in
Mhm.
and help. And sometimes that best move is to first do nothing. Let the RBT work the issue on their own and be there to provide support afterwards, be there to provide guidance if needed. But if you are always having to step in and help every time there's a crisis when you are there, that means you can't not be there.
Right.
And trying to step away from that of, oh, there's a protest behavior going on. I need to step in and help with the intervention of, no, you don't. You need to sit
Yeah.
back and you need to
Mhm.
let your team do what you've trained them to do.
Yes. Yes. And then I think the final kind of nail in the coffin of all of it is there are so many systems and processes that we don't typically allow BCBA interns or supervisees, however you might name them, um, to do when they're in that state because it's non-billable and it's administrative. They'll figure it out. Like these are administrative tasks. Everybody figures it out, but it's the combination of all the newness of everything that can be really tough to do. And so, whether it's like learning how to put your appointments in and to build a schedule for yourself or to write a treatment plan in the software and the application of that, or whether it's about following through with did you get a an incident report signed and how did you have that communication with a parent and all of these tiny little systems and things that are pretty important for either health and safety or being billable and being that professional. Those are tasks that many times we don't teach at the very beginning. And so we're doing almost a total task analysis at the same time, right? We're just teaching all of these skills all at one time, and it can be really overwhelming.
Even just things of, knowing which payer to bill. When you're adding your session to your schedule of
Mhm.
understanding primary versus secondary or school versus insurance and how to do that and what's allowed and what's not. These are all tiny little micro problems that we're not teaching, and then they're just having to figure it out.
But what's actually interesting about that statement too, though, is I see a lot of big kid BCBAs. So like people who've been BCBAs for a while, even when they join Head Start and they're thinking about starting their own company, that like overwhelm of I've been shielded from all insurance dynamics and how that works. And I just don't know that. So it's interesting, and I think it varies also by state and by employer of the level of maybe insight you get to those different kinds of things. So you might have had your internship at a place where It's all behind the scenes, and you do not have access to that. And then you might end up at a smaller mom and pop place. And it is definitely a lot of nuance that you need to know because we're all kind of wearing multiple hats at the same time. So important to think about the learning history of where these people have been.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's give our first CEU code. Please mark this number down. This is going to be part of the form that you'll be able to fill out at the end of the hour. We're also going to mail this to you as part of our wrap up for the day, but you will need to have these in order to get your certificate. So pay attention.
Do you just make
76.
up these numbers?
Yeah, all numbers are made up, really.
Sure, but like, is it a random generator or do we
No, I
just?
just think of numbers I like.
I felt good about 76.
Yeah, I felt good about it today. I don't want them to be too similar. It's not six,
Okay.
seven, so
Oh man.
off the
Or
bat.
as my 4 year old says, 611.
Oh my gosh, that's
And I just won't correct it. I'm just like, whatever.
I was doing words for a while and then I realized that everyone's spelling ability was not what I thought it
Oh, I'm
was.
glad you
So
don't.
that's why we switched to numbers. So now we do numbers.
That's so funny. All right, the more you know.
All right. So the first skill gap we are going to discuss today is executive functioning. So let's talk about what is kind of missing in that executive functioning skills. I think a
Hmm.
lot of RBTs, I'm the joke I make a lot is we get into this um, job because we love kids and we love Candyland, not because we love paperwork.
No.
And so a lot of times as an RBT, you can survive a pretty long time just knowing how to click submit timesheet or complete session.
Hmm.
It's that prioritization, that responding to emails and meeting deadlines is something that is really comes with that jump of the new
Hmm.
job.
Hmm. And I think it's also important to know that that varies from place to place and from job to job and site to site. And so those are things that can be fairly black and white, and either they need to be given to you as a framework for thinking about them, or you need to ask it explicitly, really, to understand, because that could be the difference between, a verbal warning because you just didn't know you were supposed to do that, and um and staying off the radar for that. So I think it's really important to ask for that prioritization framework.
I think that's really important too. I think as I've worked at Aloha and when I used to be a customer success manager and was talking to different organizations, everyone does things a little bit differently.
Mhm.
For some, there's that expectation that your session notes are completed and your sessions are verified same day. For some, it's kind of, whenever you get to
Within
it.
24 hours.
Within 24
Right.
hours, by next week. I hope that I'll try to not bill anything out until everyone gets their stuff in. But all of those, everyone does it a little bit differently. But as employers, I think creating those very clear workflows of what you're
Mhm.
supposed to do is really important. Because when you're too loosey-goosey, people who don't have that inherent executive functioning and organization aren't
Mhm.
going to have any guidance.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the idea that it's common sense is a selfish one for leaders and for owners. Um, most things are not common sense. You believe them to be common because of your learning history. But when it comes to the nuances of professional behavior within the workspace, it's our job to create those systems for understanding and then to teach them, just like we teach our kiddos, of what those expectations are. So if there's things that need to meet specific deadlines, those need to be written down. They need to be explicitly explained. Otherwise, um, if we are not teaching it, then we're just immediately thinking it's a performance issue, when really it could just be simply, I did not know based on the background or the history that I had, or you get into a really sensitive point of like, I'm just doing the best I can, and it's triage for me, and I just happen to take care of the first thing, which I think that level of overwhelming is for the first 18 months of being BCBA. You just like don't know what to do with your
Gonna
hands.
live with
It's just
that.
so busy. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I
Well,
say
at
if you
the
say it's common
same,
sense, it's selfish.
exactly. It's common sense for people who it's common sense for.
Mhm.
You know, I think you're married, I'm married. What I think is common sense, well, it's common sense that you wouldn't leave the toilet seat up after you go to the bathroom. Well, no, it's not
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Um, and then getting into kind of those responding in a timely way while maintaining boundaries, telling them it's okay to set those work hours. Schedule send is your friend, right? I am a
Yes.
person where it doesn't leave my brain until I know I've responded, but I also can't respond at 10:30 p.m. So I write out my response and I schedule it to go out the next morning.
Right.
Because when people think you're working 24 hours a day, even if you are, they're going to then start to ask you to work 24 hours a day, whether that is as an employer, whether that's as a parent, whether that's as another RBT.
Yeah. I think one of the things to think through too is the expectation for just a longer duration of doing everything when you are a new BCPA. You just do not yet have the fluency to complete all the different tasks at the same rate as others. And then also, it just takes more brain power to do it because you're really learning all the different steps and you're double checking and you're checking in with people. And so it's very easy to think that this is just not a that it's very easy to think that this is like a forever thing, that I will always be overwhelmed. I will always be working until 8 p.m. At one point, you really need to, if you're the new BCBA in this, you need to think through, okay, um, I am going to take a longer period of time. I know my work hours end at 5. I am going to set aside a few hours on Sunday to work through the things because I know it just takes me longer to do it. And I'm forgiving myself and I need that like focused time. But I know this is just for a season, and we're just working through a season with that. As I build fluency, then I'm going to check to see, did my work expand to the time I'm allowing it, or am I able to kind of shift it down to meet within the regular office hours? So I think it's important to kind of know that you will probably work more as a new BCBA than a veteran BCBA with more kids. It just takes longer. And I think as the owner or as a founder or even just the clinical director, it's important to teach the boundaries of like it's going to take you longer, therefore I will give you these accommodations. Maybe you don't have quite as many kids at the very beginning while you're building your fluency. Maybe you give them the understanding that like this is something that is going to take more focused downtime, and I'm going to either allow them to work from home for a certain period of time to finish a treatment plan because they need their head down, or go across the street to like a coffee shop for that. So um, giving accommodations for lack of fluency is not because this individual is not meeting standards. It's just kind of an empathetic and appropriate accommodation at the very beginning, knowing that fluency isn't there. But everything is for a season at that point.
And I think making sure too that you are really compensating them for that. If your BCBAs are hourly and they have been authorized 4 hours to write a report and it's going to take longer, you need to make sure you're taking care of them in that
Mhm.
aspect. We do have a question.
Yeah.
How can newly minted BCBAs be clear and explicit about boundaries with an employer? Many are afraid of getting in trouble for saying no.
Yeah. So I think it's a really great question of how you say it and what you're setting a boundary for. So, and also what's your work arrangement, right? So if something's like hourly and you're asked to do hourly work that exceeds what they're willing to pay you, like that's a different story. If it's like a salaried position, you're expected to work between 40 and 50 hours. So it's like it's kind of a little bit of a different story. Um, if it's about prioritization rather than saying, no, I won't, it's more of, I have this, this, and this that are currently feeling very urgent. I hear you need me to work on this. Can you help me prioritize what's most important right now? And you come from a very curious place in that, instead of saying, no, my workload is already really full and I'm feeling like I'm going to burn out. One is just using phrasing that's going to automatically trigger your employer or your leader to think not a team player. Versus the other one kind of comes from a curiosity because maybe that leader just doesn't know all the different things that you're currently working through, or maybe how complex a case has gotten recently and how much time consuming. And so there might be some easy, quick wins to help with the prioritization of it. But I mean, Meg, you've mentored a lot. So what would you do? Because I can
I think
definitely kind of understand that. Like, you want both,
absolutely.
but
I think I'm coming at it from both sides because I remember when I first passed my boards, I don't want to say what year, um, I had like four supervisors because you've got your clinical directors on each case. And
okay, yeah.
the clinical directors, at least the places I always worked with, moved with the kids, not with the BCBAs. So
Mm,
I've got direction coming from one person over here and one person over there. And I'm sitting here in the middle going, I don't know. And so I think reminding people of that and also setting up expectations ahead of time.
mhm.
Someone should know what your working hours are before they ask you to do something off hours. Someone should have these conversations before they're asking you to do something that you're uncomfortable with. So then you can remind them of like, oh, actually, I only work till 5 on Thursdays. I don't know if you remember that, rather than saying, no, I don't do that, or no, I can't do that. We're having these conversations ahead of time, setting up boundaries from the beginning. It's no is a complete sentence, and we know that, but sometimes it shouldn't be, oh, I can't this Thursday because I have to, pick up my daughter, but maybe I could rearrange another pickup for her next Thursday. Then you're starting to slide, right? It's we need to set up in advance, what are we willing to do? What are we not willing to do? And kind of maintain those over time and keep that conversation going and be very clear when it comes to, adding to my to-do list. Okay, so these are the things I'm working on. Would you like me to do this first? Or
Yep.
or can this wait, should this wait till after? Because I'm unsure. I want to make sure that I'm prioritizing correctly
Yeah.
versus you're asking me to do too much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always going to feel like too much at the beginning.
Mhm.
So let's just, it is what it is. It feels too
Yeah.
much. But I think curiosity goes a long way in building trust and rapport between you and your supervisor. So you kind of
And
understand what to prioritize.
when you see something coming down the road, bring it up sooner rather than later. I remember my
Yes.
first year going into because I used to work a lot with school districts, which limits your time because there's only so many hours in a school day. And understanding, Arlene just brought up workload versus caseload. And I'm staring down the barrel, it's early August, and I'm staring down the barrel of the school year starting and saying, okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to physically see all of these kids in a
Hmm.
week that I'm being asked to see. And I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the drive times and it's never going to happen. And rather than saying, well, I guess I'll try it. I guess I'll try to be a team player. They wouldn't have assigned it to me if they thought it was going to work. If they thought it wasn't going to work, don't do that. Go to someone ahead and say, hey, I'm looking at this. I'm not seeing a way this is going to work. Are you seeing something I'm not seeing? Or do we need to maybe rearrange
Yeah.
sooner rather than later?
Yeah. I think we go from curiosity. We assume the individual just doesn't know, and then we're going to help and be kind and educate. And then from there, we hope we can have that discourse to continue to communicate that. Otherwise, that's what HR is for.
All right. Skill gap number two. This is one of my
Yeah.
favorite conversations to have. How do you schedule yourself with all of
Hmm.
these? You've got 15 different clients on all these different days at these different times that they're available. And guess what? They're all available from 3 to 6. So when are we going to see these kids? Grad schools don't teach you about authorizations, availability, about the number of cancellations, about authorization lengths. I know I used to work in California, regional centers are use it or lose it in a month versus insurance is you can use it kind of throughout the 6 months. How does
Yeah.
that work? How does that change how you are scheduling yourself and how do we teach that?
Hmm.
So getting into it for me, the way I would always teach this is I would start with the hardest things to schedule first, right? The
Mm-hmm.
things that I'm hard scheduled for that I have to be at, team meetings, IEPs, clinic meetings, staff meetings, where if I don't show up, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Then we
Parent
start to get
training, I
in.
usually put into
Mhm.
that too, because
Yeah,
like parents will give you a very specific one. And if it's not scheduled, it's not happening.
exactly. That's a great point. Great point. And then two, kind of getting into those the kids that are going to be either one, use it or lose it hours, and two, need to be seen, right? You have a new RBT on a case. I have to see Angela a couple times, 3 times this month. I have to see my client Carlos because if I don't show up there and I'm not making changes to his program all the time, things are going to start to devolve. And times of day, kids with the strictest schedules, we got to put those in first. Those kids who only have session from 4 to 6 versus the kids who have 2 a days.
Right.
That's how we got to get into that. Geography, right? You're coming from Dallas. I'm coming from Los Angeles. That's a big range of where these kids can be. And if you're
Yes.
not at a clinic, um, that could you could add a lot of driving to your day by not planning accordingly.
Yeah. And I think also in the scheduling too, it's important to vocalize like, hey, if a 30-minute increase or a 30-minute shift in like your schedule will help decrease an hour of wait time or an hour of wasted time in your day because you're doing in-home and you notice that, those are like small shifts that a lot of times parents are willing to make to accommodate you rather than just like sitting on it's not going to happen. So I think there's that. I also see a lot of um, BCBAs who it feels like you're only serving them if you see every single client, every single RBT with every single client every week. And I think that's like a nice to have. It's not a requirement. And it's also maybe a crutch that's not necessary. And so we have to think through, is an A week, B week schedule something that we can do here? And can we make an alternating pattern and still meet our supervision requirements, still meet our billable, 97155 requirements and all of that at the same time, but not break ourselves and try to be all people for all things at all times.
And that's also a time to ask for help.
Hmm.
If sometimes you get that call from that RBT and go, it went terrible today. I need you. I need you tomorrow. Hopefully, you're at a large enough organization where there's somebody else who can help you. Maybe there's a
Hmm.
clinical director who can come in. Maybe there's someone who can cover the kid you were supposed to see so that you can go in. Maybe you just don't make all your hours that month. But and figuring out if that I need you, how important is that I need you? Does it have to be tomorrow? Does it have to be today? Can it be, hey, I've got you on the schedule for next week. Can this can we talk about it then? And kind of gauging those quote unquote scheduling emergencies.
Yeah, I think there's the percentages that we have to look for, right? So there's the 5%. You That's also why I love Aloha is I can run that real time and see like where am I? Am I trending towards where I need to be?
Yeah.
And if not, then I need to plan accordingly. So definitely something that it's I lean on there, but there's the non-negotiables. Like we cannot not do 5% supervision for
Hmm.
our RVT, or we have to, flag it with the board and let them know our plan. So let's not do that. And then let's also make sure that we are hitting our utilization expectations for what we tell insurance we're going to do because they're going to check it. It's a lot of times I'm seeing now it's use it or lose it with with authorization for 97155, you requested 16% last time, but you only used 11. We can't authorize any more than that. That's
Hmm.
kind of hard. There has to be a really specific reason why you picked that number. And, if there isn't, then of course you can shape it down to what's the least restrictive. So I think thinking through those things. And then you've mentioned before to me, Meg, about like really making sure that you schedule those densely in the first 3 weeks.
Yes,
Um, because
exactly. Try to fit as
life
much as you
happens.
can because you're going to get cancellations. I don't think there's ever been a week that my schedule has gone as planned in the
Yeah.
10, 12 years that I was practicing.
So this
Um,
is an area that I see people really struggle with. The question for you, what do you do when a parent cancels and you were supposed to go to that supervision meeting? Do you rearrange the rest of your schedule for the rest of the week? Or do you do something different? Because I find it's the mental tax and energy of I had this session, it was supposed to be there, and now I have to play Tetris all over again, move all my appointments on, our scheduling platform. What kind of guidance do you think you would give to a BCA in that situation?
I think if it was me, I'm a Tetris girl. I love that game. But if especially if it's the beginning of the month, I'm not going to leave myself an afternoon open of just not having done anything because somebody canceled. I'm going to try
Sure.
to see what I can move up. See who's available. See, if I'm sitting in my car, all right, who lives around here? Who has a session this afternoon that I can go see? Because that, and I think as we get to the last point, and I do want us, I think we probably do need to speed up a little bit because I want to make sure we leave some time for questions.
Oh, yeah, for
Um,
sure.
that importance of that bottom line, because as a supervisor, what you're also bringing into the organization is what keeps the lights on. And
Hmm.
so by just taking an afternoon, it's like, well, they canceled. Okay, that's 2, 3 hours of 97155 that now the organization is not going to get. And if you're not making it up anywhere, the downstream impact of that can be really damaging to an organization.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So as we talked a little bit about scheduling, Aloha scheduling shows you authorization usage. It shows you the utilization. It can show you the RBT supervision, how much you're using. It can show you cancellations and how much is being canceled by staff versus canceled by clients. There's so much reporting on this. We would love to offer anyone who would like one a demo in Aloha. So I'm going to throw that poll here if you are interested. No pressure at all. This is still a CEU for you, but we wanted to make sure that we're also offering the services that both Sarah and I represent. All right. Let's look at our third skill gap, creating those professional boundaries and that communication. So that thing of all of a sudden you're the expert in the room. The parent is throwing
Hmm.
questions at you that you've never heard before. The teachers at the school or the daycare workers are asking you all these things that as an RBT, no one was asking you before.
Hmm.
One of the things one of my mentors said to me, they saw me sitting in a clinic meeting, kind of panicked as the parent was just throwing things out. Oh, well, then this started too. And now he's doing this thing after school. And how do we deal with that? And
Hmm.
she looked at me and she goes, Meg, you can say, let me get back to you. Or can we talk about that next week when I'm here? I wrote that down. Let me think that over. It's okay not to have all the questions in that exact moment. And that hit me like a wave that shouldn't have. It shouldn't have been that enlightening for me to say, there's a difference
Yeah.
between I don't know and let me think on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And then at the end of the day, it just comes back to accountability. So if you say, hey, you know what? That's a really smart question, or that sounds like a really, complex situation. Um, Give me some time to think through it, and I'll follow up with you at our next parent training. And then making sure you follow up. That goes back to the executive functioning, making sure you have a system and process to write down everything that you've promised or you've said you're going to follow up on, and make sure that it happens. Because that's another thing that I do see where people get a little stuck, where they will say that, but then they start to lose trust or respect with their team or with their parents because they're not following up on things that they said that they would. So just make sure that there's a good path forward for that.
And then as we come kind of back to setting those boundaries of when you see that change, right? I was the RBT, now I'm the BCBA. Sometimes, organizations will give you the case that you've already been the RBT on to become the
Mhm.
supervisor. It feels easier in a way because you already know the programming, you already know what's going on, you know the direction, you know the family, you know the other staff. But that can also be complicated because now all of a sudden the parent is saying, well, that new RBT, well, they're not as good as you. Well, yeah, because I was taking my boards yesterday. It's a different level of someone who's brand new on the case to someone who was just in graduate school, or the parent still sees you as the RBT on the team, or the staff still sees you as their colleague and not their supervisor. And that's an important shift to make for everybody.
Yeah. I
What
think
do
it's up to
you?
the leader and the clinical
Mhm.
director to um, really say, smart question. Meg, go ahead and what do you think is the best approach? And model that, like, I trust what Meg has to say. It's her opinion, it's her expertise, and um, I'm going to follow her lead. Even if I know that there's going to be some hurdles with the decision, I'm going to let her work it out and kind of process through it. But modeling that I have 100% faith in your ability to figure it out. And then we're going to go have a one on one and we're going to talk through all of it. If we do this, then we can do this, but thinking it through. But what you say in front of a parent, if you jump in and respond to an email that the parent just CC'd you on, but really it should have been responded by the BCBA. Pause, let the BCBA respond. But you guys can consult and think through. But everything really helps kind of understand what's the new dynamic of who's in charge of this case or who has the ultimate say so of what's gonna happen. So I think that's kind of an important thing that um, leaders can leaders can definitely support with.
And as I change slides, I just want to enforce kind of what you said of you cannot change what you've said in front of a parent. Can't do
No,
it. So be very careful.
right.
I think we've all made that error. So let's talk about the fourth skill gap, reports and documentation. So we've practiced a lot of academic writing. You've probably written some goals as part of graduate school, but that is not payer-ready documentation. What payers want, what is family friendly, what the auditors are going to see are very different things.
Yeah.
So I know for me, when mentoring BCBAs, I would teach report writing in 3 stages. The first time, you're literally going to watch me write a report. I'm going to sit there, I'm going to write a report. We're going to be on a Zoom meeting. My screen is either shared. I'm going to talk you through, okay, I see this in the goals, I see this in the data. This is how I'm going to say this is how I'm writing this, and I'm going to talk it through while I write it. And you're going to observe, see one. And then the next time we write a report, we're going to do the same thing, except for you're going to be sharing your screen, you're going to be writing your report, and I am going to just be sitting there available to answer questions because you're going to have them every 7 minutes and you don't want to feel like you're bothering me. That's okay. You're not bothering me. This is your time. I'll probably be working on something else, not just sitting there going like this, but practicing that report writing. And then finally, then trying to do one on your own. And that's kind of that step and those things that we offer, like Walina, where we have all of these graphs that they can pull directly into their reports, where they can manipulate the graphs within Walina to show the data the way the payer wants to see them. These are things that whatever software tools you're doing can really, really help your new BCBAs learn how to write these reports in a timely way. Reports are scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I know we're really short for time, but one
Mhm.
thing that I always go back, and I have a theater background, so story is
Me
really important
too.
to me, but you are communicating um, to people who do not know this kid in the same way, or you are communicating to the parent that there's a path forward. this is a story. It has a beginning with the demographic information, setting the stage for why this child would really benefit from ABA. Then we have the inciting incident of the behavior and the assessments and things like that, all the way through kind of how do you create the solution and the resolution, and then to the transition plan and program. And so you need to be able to kind of put the new lens on of, did I tell this story in a compelling enough way with enough information and enough evidence to support my recommendations for hours and our forward method. And so it's very easy to be super analytical and say we're gonna I put in diagnostic information and this is my BIP, but did you tie it all together in a way that someone who is not so in depth with this child and knows all those tiny details, did you write it in a compelling manner that really tells the story? We're humans, we listen to stories. We don't necessarily pick up all these tiny little fact patterns like BCBAs do. we
Does
we like the fact patterns and to create the story, but other people need to be kind of brought in.
does that payer and auditor understand
Mhm.
why we need services so bad
And it's not
and
their
what you need?
responsibility
Hmm.
to put the pieces together. It's your responsibility in the report writing to tell the story clearly. It's just persuasive writing at a certain point.
The last skill gap we want to touch on today, and honestly, we could do a whole other webinar on this and probably will, but is that kind of external collaboration and continuity of care. So the first one is IEP meetings. IEP
Mhm.
meetings are terrifying when you've never been in one before. They don't seem to make sense a lot of times. And really having all the BCBAs understand what these things mean. We can come in here and say, well, this child should be in a gen ed class with a one-to-one. That's the least restrictive environment. Is it? And can the school do that?
Right. The school is not always the big bad wolf. And so it's really, really important. And, I have a PhD in special ed. And so I've been there, I understand it. We need to all remember that we're on the same side working towards the same goal, but we have two separate rule books and two separate things that we're really trying to accomplish. One is academic in nature, and the other one is medically necessary. And so when we talk about medically necessary, we're talking about maybe some ADLs, some communication, deceleration of problem behavior. But how we do that in uh, an ABA setting looks distinctly different than it does in a school setting. And I'd say for the majority of the kiddos that we're supporting who also go to school, the goal of school is to have access to curriculum, either through prerequisite skills or through the actual curriculum that exists. It is not to provide medical care for this child. So there's two different goals that are going on. And we would solve them in two different ways. So one-on-one in ABA makes perfect sense. That's the way that works. But one-on-one in a school is not necessarily always going to be the right answer. And so truly understanding its least restrictive environment in order to allow them to access the curriculum on the level in which they need to be able to access the curriculum. And then there are inherent red tapes and things that exist that are not the people at the table's fault necessarily for having to jump through those hoops. We can't just say, and now they need an additional one-on-one. We have to kind of show proof, because other than that, we may be violating this person's free and appropriate public education by moving from one LRE to another LRE without documenting evidence. And so one is super, super legal, and there's a lot of players involved with it. So I think being curious, making sure that you're educated on the process, understanding that we are on the same team, but we have kind of different roles, and asking a school to do exactly what we do in ABA is not an appropriate ask for most kids. There will always be the outliers for sure.
And I do want to touch on quickly setting those boundaries with the other collaborators, collaborating, but
Mhm.
still, when the speech teacher says, hey, can you work on these goals with them, making sure to always practice within the bounds of your own competence and practice within the
Yeah,
bounds of ABA. You're there to do ABA, not OT,
right.
right?
Yeah,
Just because your one-to-one is there all day, every day, doesn't mean they need to be working on everyone else's goals.
right.
We wanted to touch quickly on peer-to-peer reviews when you're doing
Mm.
insurance reviews. I'm going to kind of speed through this because I want to make sure that we get to everything. But really, when you're asked to do a peer review, make sure you're getting a peer, right? Ask for the
Mhm.
person's credentials. Make sure that, because a lot of times you'll get someone who doesn't know anything about ABA and you're trying to justify a service to them that they don't even understand.
Yeah.
Um, don't always assume that they've read your report, but go in there, lead.
No.
They probably haven't actually. But lead with your data, show them what you need, tell them what you need, and it is okay to say
Mhm.
no. If they say, are 20 hours enough? No,
No.
it's not. That's why I asked for
Yep.
30. Thanks so much. Um,
Hmm. And there was a really powerful statement that I learned, which is, are you providing me with the medical recommendation for my patient?
mhm.
And they say, oh, no, no, I can't do that. And you go, okay, my medical recommendation is this. And then that's when we can kind of pause and just make sure that they're not violating some of the really important laws that we have out there. So, I mean, again, this is one of those things that requires mentorship. It requires somebody to sit next to you. It is not an assumed skill. It scares the process. It scares, even us seasoned providers. And so definitely be really open to asking for help in but what you say on these calls, they become permanent. So saying nothing is also an option as well. So
Um, so we are going to give our second CEU code right now. If someone can actually put a question in here that just says, please share the CEU form, that would be great because that will give us an opportunity to share the form. You'll also get the form as an email. I think we made a little error in the fact that we disabled the chat, but it is coming our way. Thank you, Donna, and Allison and Karen. Okay, we got
look at
it.
that.
We're good.
Yeah.
Um, and Arlene wanted to remind us all to be careful of our company's level of care guidelines as well. So as we are wrapping up today, wanted to just throw out this second poll here. I am going to end our first poll. Thank you so much for all the people who answered. And we're going to add in our other poll for Head Start. And if Sarah, maybe you can give a little intro into what you are asking for, what you can offer anybody who wants.
Yeah, absolutely. So, our mission is to remove barriers for BCBAs who want to go independent, want to start their own ABA companies. And so, if that sounds like something that's super interesting to you, maybe you're curious about it, I'm happy to chat with you. Currently, we take state by state as we're growing and supporting. So, we support currently in North Carolina, Indiana, and Georgia. We'll add a few more states around Q2 of this year. But if this is something that you're interested in, would like to reach out, just submit that poll and I can reach out to you and we can either have a chat or I can send you additional information.
Right. So for anyone who missed any of the codes, this presentation will be available online on Aloha ABA in the next couple of days, and you can go back. The first code was 76,
Yes, not 67,
not
76.
67, 76. So I'm going to skip over the role of the employer just because we
Yeah.
are kind of short on time today. I wanted to leave a few moments for questions,
Hmm.
but you can review
And
the
I think
slide at a later time. I think we've talked about
we've
all of
embedded
this,
those
really.
quite a bit too.
Yeah, we did it. We did a great
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
This is Sarah and I's
We're
problem is we always
this
go over
was
on time.
this
Yeah,
was
it's a
really
really
great.
good CEO.
I think we were
Everyone.
super clear.
Okay.
Um,
So if anybody has any questions, you can please stick them in the CEU form. The second code was the number 90, Morgan, that you saw it. You are welcome, Stacy. Thank you so much. I know we're wrapping up today. If anyone has any questions, you can also always feel free to
mhm.
reach out to me or reach out to Sarah. All of our info will be in Aloha and on the CEU that we post.
Yeah.
See if we have anything. Second code was 90, Yulia. Thank you. All right. So thank you again so much for joining. I'm Meg Jones. I'm with Aloha ABA Practice Management and Molina Data Collection. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to help you manage your practice, help you get your BCBA's executive functioning and scheduling and organized a little bit better if you need it. Sarah, one more
Yep.
chance for yourself to plug.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm Sarah Feldman. I'm over at Head Start Health, where we support BCBAs to start their own ABA companies.
And we are looking forward to doing a lot more live CEUs. We have online CEUs for ethics and things. We have more that are going to be posted later this month. So
Yeah.
please continue to access these. We love to do this. And if you have any ideas or things that you'd love to hear us talk about, Sarah's basically my best friend now. So she's going to be doing a
It's
lot.
good. No, it's so great. So yeah, I mean, if there's something that's like a burning question or a hot topic, or maybe it's a CEU that you just haven't seen before, but would be really helpful. Sometimes we just don't have that top of mind. So drop it in the chat or email Megan and we can think of something that's truly applicable to your life. We don't want to do ones just for us.
Thank you again so much for joining. It was lovely to see you
Yeah,
all. And next time.
awesome. See you next time.